The first thing that happened to me was I turned the game on. I watched the opening cutscene, which is great, by the way. And then like I got to the walking part, and like you don't know there's a run button yet or not, right? And like I started walking, and I was like, "Is this for real?" It is the slowest. I'm not exaggerating. I cannot think of another game that has a slower walk cycle than this. Is like we didn't play test it slow.
Dawn was just like, the walk of speed. He's like, yo, is this for real? And then he actually starts running, and it's, not even that much faster. He's like, yo, is this for real?
Die, monster! You don't belong in this world!
Welcome to the Cable Club. We're a retro video gaming podcast where three guys try very hard not to spontaneously combust, and we're linking up to talk about the games we love. We're your hosts. I'm Steve.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Don.
And this is episode number 18. This week's episode is a random encounter, and the randomly selected game is Parasite Eve. So get ready to upload data from us to you, but first, let's paint a picture. It's 1998. It's 2 a.m. and your room is pitch black. The only light you have shining directly at you is your old CRT TV. You know you shouldn't still be up. It's way past your bedtime. If your parents catch you, there'll be hell to pay. You've been playing this game for some time now, and it's different than all those other games that you've played. This one is actually pretty scary. Each corner you turn, you can feel your anxiety rising and your palms getting sweaty, your heart beating out of your chest. You've been slowly slogging through this game despite the fears that you had, and it's become personal. You're gonna conquer it tonight. Once you've reached the end, the music starts to swell. You know that it's now or never, but you hear movement outside of your room. So quickly you turn your TV off and you fly under your covers. Your door creaks open and then shuts again quietly. That was a close one. But it's finally time to face your fears. Parasite Eve.
Nice.
I feel like I need like a little here we go.
Speaking of, I actually watched Wednesday for the first time.
My wife was watching it and it looked great, and it was not something I'm interested in.
Yeah,
but I might go watch it now.
I don't know. It just sparked me when you did the.
Well, it kind of fits the horror theme of Parasite Eve a little bit, right? Yeah.
That's true. It does a little bit.
To be fair, the Addams Family have had an awful lot of retro games. I don't even think there's a single Addams Family, video game title that isn't retro at this point. So,
what was the one
saying.
On the NES? It was like
Fester's Return or something.
Yeah.
Fester's Quest. There are a couple, but yeah, Fester's Quest. I think is the one you're thinking of, the top-down one with the gun.
Yeah.
It is.
It's like elephant gun or whatever it is.
Where you can pick up upgrades and downgrades accidentally. Yeah. It's fun. So how you fellas doing? Did you enjoy this game? Having a good time with it?
I think it was okay. Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely worth a playthrough. I think just for the story. But yeah, we'll get into it.
Yeah, I don't want to jump into it quite yet, but I had some fun. Yeah.
Well, good, because we should jump into question of the week first.
All right. Question of the week.
Dan, what do you got for us?
All right, hold on 1 second. Let me pull it up here. Okay, so This question comes from Orvos. What was your most emotional gaming moment?
I'm gonna go first.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think I'm gonna go first this time.
All right. So mine is actually from a game called Lost Odyssey. I don't know if you guys recall this one,
Oh, yep, yep.
Yeah.
but Lost Odyssey was a game for the Xbox 360, and it was Microsoft's foray into the big multi-disc RPGs.
That was on my list.
Yeah, it was very, very JRPG, especially for the time.
Little
So
known fact before you jump into that: Lost Odyssey. Hironobu Sakaguchi, the original father of Final Fantasy, he made that game. Not
it
with
actually
Square.
shows.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Despite the combat being a little bit lacking, this game it really excels in the story. So you start out you're a character who has memory loss, pretty typical JRPG stuff, right? But as you go through the game and you search around, you just encounter more memories. Like your character is functionally immortal, and he learns things from other people and can take them on into his combat style. And basically, he's just remembering, all of his years. There's a very convoluted storyline as to where he comes from, but basically, there's this horrific flashback he keeps having over and over again, where his wife jumps off a cliff with with their baby in her arms, and like every time he has his flashback, he gets a little bit closer and a little bit closer, so you can see what's kind of going on, and he doesn't manage to save her. And then much later on in the game, you help out these couple of kids. I forget exactly with what. It's been a long time since I've played this game. They're trying to like sneak in somewhere, and you got to help them like beat up the guards or whatever. And they end up taking you back to their home, and they explain
Oh,
to you that their mom is sick, right? And I forget if you do an errand to go like uh, get medicine or something, but by the time you get back, it's basically too late, and the kids are there, and they're watching their mom die, and it
yeah,
turns out that mom was your character's daughter the whole time. So he has to like sit there and basically lose her a second time. And that really was the first time a video game kind of got me choked up. And I think it's kind of a lesser known moment in
yeah,
gaming history.
yeah. I remember that part specifically too, because I remember like the joke character in that game is like Jansen, and he always tries to make light of everything, but like even him in that cutscene, you could just tell that he was just broken down, like he was just sad at the whole situation. So yeah, it was pretty heavy stuff.
Good game.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the Lost Odyssey.
I didn't finish it, but I think I made it probably halfway through. I didn't own it. A friend had it.
Yeah, no, it's worth the playthrough for
Maybe
sure.
it'll come up on the podcast sometime, which would be great
Yeah,
when it hits 20 years old. It's
yeah,
getting
I
close.
think it's not far.
I know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, no, I think we're
within
2 or 3 years
5 years.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I
What
beat
about
it
you,
in 2 weeks.
Steve?
Um, so originally I was gonna go with Final Fantasy VI when you wake up with Celes and you're in like the world of ruin. That's pretty sad.
It's particularly hard for a 2D, you know, JRPG back in the day. That
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
does hit really hard.
Um, but Final Fantasy 15 actually, despite all of its flaws, so like in this game, your entire nation gets overrun by monsters, and you have to evacuate. And with you, you have your best friend, you have your bodyguard, and you have your basically it's like your nanny. He takes care of you, he cooks, and he cleans up after you, that kind of stuff. Ignis, he's actually my favorite.
Yeah.
Um, but you go through this. It's basically like a big road trip almost to try and save your kingdom, basically. And there comes a point near the end of the game where you wake up like 10 years in the future, and the entire world is covered in the darkness. I can't remember what it's called, but it's where the monsters can spawn and live, and so people can't do that. And it's slowly encroaching on the last settlement that humans have, and um, you end up having to go in and sacrifice yourself in the end. But while you're getting ready to do it or whatever, they're playing uh, "Lean on Me" or no, "Stand
Yeah.
by Me." That song "Stand by Me," and it was really really tough for me coming to that realization, because that year I had moved away from New Hampshire and everybody only like a month after I finished the game to live in Tennessee, and it was really hard because going through that game, those guys are basically like your brothers.
Brothers, yeah.
He doesn't have a sibling. Uh, Not that I remember anyway, but these guys are like his brothers,
Yeah.
and so having to leave them behind, and it was really tough for me.
Yeah. Like that last like campfire scene where he, basically like Noctis is like, breaking down crying, and he just basically says, you guys are the best. You've been there through thick and thin for me. Yeah.
Yep, that was
I
tough.
remember that.
I don't know why when you started this story, I thought you were talking about Final Fantasy VI when you wake up as Celeste and you
Yeah, no, that was an honorable mention.
and she was going to commit suicide. Yeah, I just like zoned out there for a second, and I was like, wait, where are we?
Let me guess, Dan's gonna pick Red Dead.
Wow, that was a good guess.
It's
How
Dan's
did you
turn.
know? I'm curious. How did you know?
I hear a lot of people talk about how there's a big gut punch in the game, but I haven't played it, so I'm
Yeah,
completely
well,
unaware of
okay.
what you're gonna
So
say.
you got the one I'm gonna talk about, but I have a couple honorable mentions. Yakuza Like a Dragon near the end of the game. It's very heartfelt.
I'd be really
Um,
disappointed if Dan came to one of these questions of the week with any fewer than 3 selections.
yeah. I mean, there's a couple I have actually, and this one, Chrono Trigger, like when you lose Chrono and then when you get him back, I feel like those are pretty touching moments.
Don's never played it. Such a travesty.
Yeah, maybe we'll get it on the podcast.
Hopefully not as part of a Coliseum.
Oof.
And then Red Dead Redemption 2. Yeah. So you're basically, it's this, I think it's set in like 1990, like or 1899. And basically, I don't know, you're like part of a gang and whatnot, and your guy's name's Arthur Morgan, and basically like he tries to do what's right, even though he's like part of like a gang that steals, but like, they're like family. And the ringleader eventually becomes like corrupt, and he starts like doing killing people and stuff like that. And Arthur Morgan tries to set it straight. It's like, even though we're out in the wild, we should still try to live like honest lives. I know in the first game you play as what's his name, John Marston. And I know like some people were like kind of disappointed when they played Red Dead Redemption 2 that you were a completely different protagonist, which is Arthur Morgan. But which is funny because it's like you go through this game and then you just, you have like such a bond with this character after a while that like you actually prefer Arthur over Jack Marston, which I thought was pretty neat. I never played the first one before I played the second one, so like I didn't really have that connection. But I know a lot of people do. And I definitely do not want to spoil the ending if like, for anyone who's watching this or hearing this, and or especially you guys, if you end up playing it sometime, near I want to say like 80% of the game, there's some, definitely like Steve said, there's some gut punching emotions. And I want to say to this day, Arthur Morgan's probably one of the best protagonists like ever in a game, ever. And I don't take that lightly. But yeah, that was my pick.
I mean, modern gaming, I think, hits that a lot better. I really think they've kind of
Yeah,
leaned into that. I think The Last of Us wasn't the first game to ever do it, but I think was probably the most famous example of a game that really, you know, moved a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, and there's a lot of scenes. It's not even just right at the beginning. Like, there's a
Yeah,
point in which like you think your main character is gonna die. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
like
yeah.
it's a really good story.
Um, so speaking of which, our audience answers, we actually had quite a few right in. So Orvos himself, the asker of the question, said Final Fantasy VII losing Aerith. I think we can all kind of agree with that a little bit.
Only if you
Uh,
used her.
I was always a Tifa fan anyway. Just let her go.
Team Tifa.
I'm glad they stayed true to that in the remake. There you go. See you later. Uh, Wingard says the ending of the Telltale Walking Dead. Did you guys play that?
No, I have not. I don't
So
think I've ever played a Telltale game, to be honest
I
with you.
I do know the ending, and it's another one of those games that's not the only part that's like especially hard hitting. Telltale games are like playable novels or graphic novels or whatever you want to call them, so they do emphasize the feels and storylines and stuff like that. Especially the Walking Dead one. There are a lot of shocking moments.
I'm sure.
Danko Misty says Midna's Lament, the lore, which is a lore book from The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess, which I
Oh,
watched Steve play
oh,
entirely, but I
really?
did not play myself.
That's an interesting pick. Yeah, now I'm curious.
I haven't read that book, but I can only imagine where like the Twilight Realm getting taken over by Zant and by Ganondorf would be pretty tough for like Midna, for example, who's so headstrong and powerful as a female protagonist. In that story, I can imagine how tough it would be for her
I
in
read a few
general.
notes on it, and apparently, just like Hyrulean history, basically just kind of like rolled the rolled over the whole issue too, which is part of her problem with it.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I see.
Avatar numbers says the beginning of Fallout 4 when your kid gets taken and your partner gets killed. But also he had a different spin, which I find more interesting, was the glory he felt when he beat Mike Tyson for the first time in the Punch Out game. And I think that I love the way that he interpreted that question because I have a sneaking suspicion we've all had moments where we've beaten a boss or a game where you're just like, yeah, you're on top of the world for the rest of
Yeah,
the day.
Man,
yeah, I do
if
like
you
that
It's
want,
like we
spin.
beat Super C.
yeah, if you want that feeling, man, Final Fantasy 14's got it in spades. With the Savage rating,
Yeah.
uh, such a good feeling.
I can't get that feeling from an MMO. Get out of here.
You are completely wrong.
JMO says, in quotes, "You knew from the Spider-Man game for the PS4. I did not play it. Did one of you play it?
Yes.
All right.
I'm
Describe
just
that
gonna
scene
go
a
out and
little
say
bit
it.
for me.
Okay, so at the end, you're fighting Doc Ock, and you're having a hell of a time, and it's a really really tough fight, and obviously it's taking a big toll on Peter Parker, and finally Doc Ock like has you up against the ropes basically, and he's about to like kill you, and you throughout the whole game you've been working for Doc Ock, trying to help solve his issue in his lab as Peter Parker, as his friend, and right at the last minute, he's about to kill you, and Peter takes his mask off, and he goes, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, wait, wait, wait," and Doc Ock like doesn't care. So he's like, "I knew it was you, Peter, all along." He's like, "You knew?" That's what he's talking about. So Doc Ock is
Okay.
still gonna take him out, but you use that obviously. Spider-Man never dies. Take that time to his advantage. But yeah, that's what happens.
That is not true.
Pretty
In the
backstabbing.
in Ultimate Spider-Man, Peter Parker definitely, absolutely does
Oh,
die,
I meant in this game. You know what I meant. Yes, superheroes die, then come back.
especially Spider-Man.
Yeah, he dies in Spider-Verse too.
Marvel's favorite whipping boy.
Oh boy.
But yeah, that's like the whole like thing around that game.
Good stuff. Good discussion happening over in our Discord. So,
Yeah.
if you want to get your questions of the week, dear listener, try writing in to our email address, thecableclubpodcast@gmail.com, or even better, join the Discord. You can find the link either in the profile of our YouTube account or in the description below. Just go ahead and click there and jump on in. Say the Discord pops off maybe like once every other day these days.
Yeah.
Also, it's
definitely
the only
does.
way to get your game on the randomized list for a victory road. So joining the Discord has its perks.
It's definitely your Cable Club host, and it's free. Free,
Yeah.
free, free.
Join the Discord.
Join the Discord. Those guys rock. All right. You guys ready to get into some news?
Let's do it.
Guys, there is one headline, the only headline, vacuuming up all of my mental energy over the past couple weeks, and that was his last Nintendo Direct, which I would say is a 10 out of 10 Nintendo Direct, especially after the last one where we got what, like one crab's trash is another crab's treasure, or whatever
Yeah,
that game is.
yeah.
Like, okay, so you know, uh, we got just some highlights. A new Mario and Luigi game, yes, from that franchise, Mario and Luigi, which
So
started
good.
on the GBA. It's excellent except for Paper Jam. We
The
got
last one we had was on the 3DS, right? Dream Team.
uh, Paper Jam was the last one
Okay.
actually, but Dream Team came before it. We got a new Zelda game, which is top down, back to that traditional Zelda format. That one's for Steve, even though he's mad about it.
It's the second Zelda game to be made that you play as Zelda.
What's the first one?
The Book of No, it's one of the Panasonic CGI ones.
So I've seen
that one.
I've seen a meme going around since like now you're Zelda saving Link. So shouldn't it be called The Legend of Link?
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Donkey Kong Country Returns, I guess in HD is coming to Switch.
That
Whatever.
game is sick. If
It
you
is.
Yeah.
want
It
to
is
talk about
sick. It
a
is sick.
game that might be better than the source material, even though our retro gaming podcast, that game is great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For sure.
I started playing it on 3DS. It is really sweet, and like some of the speedrunning stuff is very cool. You have so many
Oh,
controls in that game. But anyway,
well, real quick, because I really do want to say it. It is the game that kind of got me into speedrunning because I watched Spike Vegeta play it on a GDQ, and it looked so fun. It was like the first game I started to try and learn the speedrun on because it was just so fun.
it's
Yeah.
an example of a more modern title too that is tough as nails. Like it is really really hard to do those speed runs and get the gold medals, let alone the shiny gold medals. Like you really need to be some level of perfection and practice. It really is good. And then finally, the other highlight for me, I wanted to save the best for last, is Metroid Prime 4.
Yeah. Hell
Dan,
yeah.
how excited are you for
I
Metroid Prime
am
4?
I am very excited. So now I don't know if they said I don't think they said what they're releasing it on, but I am hoping that it's a Switch 2 release. And like obviously they can go back and like dumb it down and put it on the original Switch, but I want it to be like a main title for the Switch too, because it's like that game super deserves it.
I would be very, very okay with a dual launch like Twilight
Yeah,
Princess.
yeah, absolutely. I really want them to utilize the hardware for the Switch too for Metroid Prime 4. I'll be very disappointed if it's just a Switch 1 release.
There
But
is
we'll
plenty
see.
of precedent for it within Nintendo. They
Yeah,
they do occasionally do that
yeah. But yeah,
because if they don't, that's a little bit worrisome for the series because I feel like late stage development games never sell that well,
right.
and then they always end up like I feel like they end up screwing over the series that they are, right? Like Donkey Kong Country 3, didn't sell well despite actually being a pretty good game.
Final
Um,
Fantasy IX didn't sell well, and it was a great
yeah,
Final Fantasy
Yeah,
game.
for sure.
but like in Donkey Kong's case, I feel like it kind of hurt the series in the long run. Because Donkey Kong 64 was also a late stage release too.
Yeah.
So I think they just, are more hesitant about Donkey Kong even to this day, right? And I know they had the falling out with Rare, but that's long since passed.
Yeah,
Right.
now they
So
got Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze.
Yeah. So, like, I mentioned the Switch 2, which, we don't know much about, but in the direct they said we'll know more about it next year. I think it was in April.
Yeah,
So,
I hear that they're shooting for a rough release date around the month that the Switch was released, and I remember pre-ordering a Switch and got it in April of 2017.
yeah.
So
So, just because they mentioned Metroid Prime 4, that doesn't mean it's going to come out like, anytime soon. But like, I really hope that they do wait for, like the Switch 2 to release that game because, yeah, I can't wait.
you know what I was really surprised about with this Nintendo Direct is how much support for JRPGs are coming out right now for that system. They're
Oh,
getting the
yeah.
HD 2D remakes of Dragon Quest 1 through
1 through 3.
3.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tons of new strategy games I'd never heard of. Tons of other RPGs. Like, tons of stuff coming out on the Switch for
we could just
JRPGs.
leave Dragon Quest 1 where it is. This is
Hey, it
not the
might be.
last time I'm going to talk about Dragon Quest 1 during this episode, by the way.
I'm curious.
Oh,
This is
I
this is
know why.
foreshadowing.
I've
Yeah.
got it. I know
Oh,
why.
yeah. I know why. Yep. But like, I want to talk a little bit about like the Dragon Quest remakes. They actually look gorgeous. Like the way that they handle it, like how like you're on the world map and like it's 2D, but like in a 3D world where it's like you're walking on the world map, but like there's like the terrain's like bumpy and stuff, so your character actually dips down and goes back up. It looks so cool.
What caught me visually is the lighting and the colors that they used. It really does look really gorgeous.
Yeah. That I will say Nintendo is very good at like art style and whatnot. They do a good job.
This is
And
the best like send off I think any console has ever had. Like I'm just trying to think about it. Like this is really deliberate. This is like a deliberate celebration, saying goodbye to the Switch. Like I don't think that's ever been done for a console before. I think usually what happens is the new thing launches to much fanfare and then the, previous console just dies quietly alone.
yeah, pretty much. It's definitely up there for sure.
And they also teased, maybe not teased, but just released like some mature rated games on the Switch Online, like Perfect Dark and
Oh yeah,
a
yeah.
couple other. It was pretty cool. So, yeah, no. Aside from Prime 4, which I don't know if that's what we're all most excited for, but I think it's me and Dan's number one on the Nintendo Direct. I'm not sure about you, Don.
It's Mario and Luigi for me, definitely. Just don't screw it up again.
Okay, so
Don't do another paper jam. Don't you dare.
you answered my question. Dan, what is your next most anticipated thing from the Nintendo Direct?
Well, I wanted it to be Zelda, but like I don't really know, man. There's just like the whole crafting system and stuff like that. I mean, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but what is with games lately with trying to add like crafting sims and all these games? It's just like just leave them to like
This
their
one
own
doesn't craft
IPs.
though. This one you just like can pick items and puzzle
Yeah.
solve with
Oh,
them.
I know she was like building chairs and stuff and hopping on them, and I was just like,
Yeah,
ah,
building a staircase kind of deal.
get that out
I
of my
want you to
game.
be able to solve problems any way you want.
Very handy for a princess.
Yeah.
She is the Triforce of Wisdom.
That's fair.
Yeah, but to answer your question, Steve, it's probably going to be the Dragon Quest remakes, I believe. Yeah, but definitely Metroid Prime 4 is
It's not
definitely
the
number one.
farming monster sim.
Oh yeah. Actually, that's actually my number one. I'm sorry.
Which one is that one?
Farmagius or something.
Oh man, that I think I shut it off at that point.
I'm just over here thinking fellatio every time. I couldn't help it.
I think there was someone in the Discord that was like trolling and saying this was the best announcement by far.
Oh, it was Acheron on the Shire game.
Oh,
It's like
Wingard, yeah.
yeah, dude, no.
Yeah. I gave him a
Oh,
clown emoji.
it's literally like Animal Crossing but hobbits. And if
Yeah.
that's your thing, that's your thing, but it is not mine.
I could. I could be into it for like I would give it a shot. I really do like Lord
If
of the Rings
you
and like that
doing
lore.
chores while trying to play video games, all the power to you.
I mean,
but
we
not
just
me.
played Ori no Riori, and we had a great time washing dishes, squashing bugs, and chasing down Dine Dashers. It was
Those are mini
fantastic.
games.
Yeah, isn't that? I mean, hopefully that's kind of what this is. I've never played Animal Crossing, but I would imagine like Farmville is like the cheap rip off of it, right? But you could get your idea from that. So I don't know. I'm not really that cozy of a gamer, although I like to be comfortable in the digital world.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
Yeah, I'm not interested in that game even a little.
Wow.
For me, it's
Unbelievable.
Mario and Luigi.
No,
Mario
this
and
is-
Luigi, man, I'm excited, so excited.
I mean, I think the only thing I could have asked for is maybe a little bit more information on the Switch too. But you know, I was just so blown away by everything that they announced.
Yeah. They
You know,
came out
it's-
swinging, dude.
Yeah, really, really good. Really,
Dan, you
really
haven't
good.
played a Mario and Luigi game, have you?
No. So how
You
many are
should-
there? How many are there?
5?
5.
Wow, dude. I gotta get started.
There's the original. There's Partners in Time. There's Bowser's Inside Story. There's Dream Team, Paper Jam, and now the new one, Brotherhood.
Okay. So there's 5 because Paper Jam's bad, right?
There's actually a remake of this 4 because Paper Jam's bad.
Okay. So 4.
Hood.
No, it's not called Brotherhood. It's called something else. Brothership, Brothership. Which I don't know how I feel about that title either.
Oh, I thought it was Brotherhood. Brothership,
No.
huh?
Brothership.
That's weird.
It is weird, right? I don't like it. I hope it's a
Well, because it's a partnership, right?
mistranslation. Yeah, I hope so, but I don't like the word ship being used in this context.
Yeah, it does sound weird.
It's odd. I'm
Either
sure.
way, it looks
Just
good.
don't Google the word on its own, and you'll be fine. All right, guys, you ready to hop on into the game of the week?
I sure am.
Ready?
All right, let's go. Alrighty, so as we said at the top of the show, this is a random encounter format episode. So in this episode, we're kind of sticking to a more formal review. We're going in order of 5 categories, which are today going to be gameplay, pacing, presentation, playability, and category formerly known as X Factor, officially renamed today Choice Specs.
Woo!
Because we're a Pokemon scented podcast. I'm giving up that joke. We'll explain the categories as we go, and then at the end we will tell you all whether Parasite Eve is worth catching or if you should run away from it, which is our general consensus on whether we think you should play it or not. Essentially we say run away, you should probably avoid it as a retro gaming title, and if we say catch it, by majority, probably worth a second look.
Yep.
So, just an overview of Parasite Eve. It is billed as a horror cinematic RPG and it is put out by the venerable Square company back when it was called Square Soft. Did not yet own the Enix portion. In
Square
1998, it is Square's first rated mature game. And it is actually, a little piece of trivia, a follow-up to a novel written by an author. I'm going to butcher his name, Hideaki Senna. I don't know. Sorry if he's listening. The novel is by the same name, Parasite Eve. And supposedly, I don't know how much I believe this, but I did a bunch of Googling around, depending on who you ask, depending on which corner of Reddit you're in, to find this information. The game was developed entirely behind the author's back.
Yeah, that's
And,
wild.
essentially was greenlit at the end. He was satisfied with it and allowed to move forward. But by the time the second game came out, the publisher, Square, and the author not so much liking each other anymore. And, the author's like, oh, well, it's my material. Square's like, well, it's our character models and, environments and everything, and got ugly. And there was a third game, and then that was kind of it for the series. So, without further ado, let's get into the gameplay. Guys, you want to tell? Who wants to start? Kick it off.
I'll do gameplay.
All right.
So, in this game, you have you play as a police. Is she a detective or just an officer?
I think she's just an officer.
I think
Yeah,
she's
she's
a
a
detective
rookie.
because she's not.
Yeah, I think
She's
she's
not
a rookie detective with
clothed like an officer. Like
Okay.
she doesn't wear a police
Yeah,
uniform.
that
I
is
believe
true.
she's a detective.
Yeah. And in this game, you run around in pre-rendered backgrounds. It's kind of like a Final Fantasy game from the time.
Very reminiscent of Final Fantasy VIII. Not to get
Yeah.
into too much presentation, but yeah.
And in it, what happens is you get there. I'd call them like in between a random encounter and set encounters, almost like Chrono Trigger, in a way. Like
Yeah.
you just run into an area and all of a sudden the enemies like show up on the map.
Yeah,
They only show up in that area too. Like you can
Right.
go back and you might find the same encounter again, but it's only like that. They're relegated.
Yeah,
actually
that's very
have a
Chrono
name.
Trigger like.
They have a name. It's actually they're called hotspots.
Oh.
Yeah.
My dog has hot spots in the summer. We have to put a cream on her so she doesn't itch too much. Which is kind of, relevant to our discussion today. Her mitochondria are all out of whack. So
yeah.
It's the powerhouse of the cell. Anyway, so the main difference between this, or there's a couple, but one of the main differences between this and like your traditional like RPG is that you can move around in battle, almost like an action RPG. It's like a precursor. It's like a precursor to Kingdom Hearts in a way.
Hey.
Well, you have to wait for your commands to be available, right?
But you don't have to in Kingdom Hearts. You can just swing away whenever you feel like
right.
it.
Well,
it's kind of similar.
Square did something like this, though.
It's kind of similar to like Mega Man Battle Network, where it's like you're moving around while you're waiting for like the custom gauge to fill, which is your ATB, and then when it fills up, you can either choose like magic or attacking or changing your weapon and all that stuff.
Yeah, and it allows you to dodge attacks if you move properly. It allows you to position for things like critical hits and all that. I found
there is
shooting
like a
enemies from
positioning.
behind.
Yeah, there's a positioning element, right? Like, because when you go to attack, there's like a bubble that zooms out from you.
Yep.
And if an enemy is in the bubble, he's an easy target, and you're going to deal full damage. But you can shoot things outside the bubble. If you shoot things outside the bubble, it seems like you deal a lot less damage.
Yeah.
Or miss a lot.
A lot less.
Or just straight up miss, yeah.
Right. It's not even worth trying to shoot outside the bubble.
Yeah. And in this game, you get some magic, which helps heal and get rid of poison and things like that.
You are a white mage with a gun. Like, you have the whole white mage kit.
Including a
for
club.
yourself.
You Cure 1, Cure 2, Cure 3, they're just called heal.
Yeah.
You have Regen, which is called Gene Heal.
Yep.
You've got Barrier. You've
Scan.
got Confuse, Scan, Haste, Slow.
I love haste.
Like,
Yeah. So, it's kind of like an RPG, but when your ATB fills, I don't know what they call it in this, but anyway, when it fills, you select to attack, you get to choose an enemy to attack, and some enemies have multiple hit points. Like there's an alligator boss who has a tail, so it's like another point that you can attack on it. And enemies have different attacks you can dodge in real time, and you know, it's kind of like a mix between an action RPG and like an RPG, like a more traditional RPG world building elements.
And you can
Yeah.
shoot when your ATB bar is full, or you can choose a command. Like you can change weapons, you can use an
Right.
item, you can use magic, and then it'll take out your ATB bar, and you gotta wait for it to fill up again. What did you guys think of it? Because I have an opinion, but I want to hear yours first.
Which part? Like just the whole battle system, or
Yeah, let's just stay on the battle system for a
okay?
minute.
So for me, I don't know. Like I felt it was like serviceable, but I feel like there definitely could have been like improvements. It's just like I don't really think there's like a different way to play the game. Like I feel like if you're going through the game, like you and Joe Schmo, I really don't think there's like a totally different way to play it because like every gun is, in my opinion, is essentially the same. It's either faster or slower. It is basically what it is. The
Oh,
animation might be different, but it's basically all it is.
I was so disappointed by that too, because I picked up a grenade launcher and I was like, yeah, I don't
Yeah,
care what this thing does, I'm gonna make it work. You would think, right? A grenade launcher, like you would
yeah,
have like splash damage or something, and like maybe you can't stand too close because it'll like explode and hit you too. But like, no, it doesn't. It was more like just like a, I don't know. I'd almost call it like a shotgun,
yeah,
basically. It just
yeah,
throws slugs.
yep.
Ugh.
Every gun uses the same ammo, which is great.
For the most part, yeah.
I'm very happy about that.
So like all the guns are essentially, in my opinion, are the same. Like I was saying, where they're just either faster or slower. What makes the guns different is not necessarily the gun itself, is but what they have for perks. So basically, a gun can have like it can either like shoot multiple times. There's a perk that where you can do ice damage or fire damage or acid damage. You can also, so I actually did find an actual shotgun in the game. It was pretty late, and I think it was like in the museum, and that actually does have spread damage. But the problem with it is it cuts your damage in half at least. So I was like, I don't really like this.
No,
Yeah, you don't want to be. Well, that's kind of where the switching comes into place. So, you can switch weapons. Like I would switch over to the club a lot because the club steals items, and you
Yeah,
can get a lot of really good items from bosses and even sometimes from normal enemies by stealing. So yeah, I'd switch to the club for a little while and just like try to beat him down until I got what I was looking for, and then pull the gun back out, just for instance. So there's some merit to carrying multiple guns around that do different things.
yeah. My only beef with it is like when you switch a weapon, it like completely like drains your ATB. So I don't know if I really
takes a
like
turn to
that.
do it.
Is it
Yeah.
is it
Yeah.
your only beef? I think
Well,
there's
not
more
my
beef to go
not
around.
my only beef, but with like the weapon switching, I was going for there. But yeah, it's just it feels pretty clunky to me. Like when you like switch weapons or use like a spell or whatnot, because it like complete like there's so much downtime in between, like you casting a spell or changing a weapon. I kind of like it when you're shooting your gun, as you're shooting your gun, it is in while you're in that animation, your AT bar is still filling up. But when you're casting a spell or you change a weapon, it completely goes all the way down, and to me, it feels like a little clunky and slow.
I do like that the I don't know what it stands for, but the PE bar, it fills like constantly. It's like refresh in you
Yeah,
know
Yeah,
Final
PE
Fantasy.
is your, I don't know if they call it parasite energy or what, but it's your mana. It's what you use
yeah.
to cast spells.
So
Yeah, it's
base,
nice that just fills up. I never had to use medicine. I was always just
Right.
had mana to heal myself with spells.
So the caveat to that too is it has like a base speed that it fills up as, but the more you use it in the same battle, the slower it like regenerates.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I
mean,
was
battles don't
staring
last
at it.
very long, thank goodness.
Right.
Yeah, they're a little clunky. I can say that I didn't find enough like excitement in the battles personally. Like it felt really clunky, really slow. Like it just wasn't exciting. Like
Yeah.
even the boss fights just didn't feel exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a little bit blending into a pacing issue, but the battle is like so clunky and it's so close to a JRPG. I feel like it pulls you out of any semblance of the survival horror part of this game. And like
Yeah.
it's clunky, in the same way that if you've ever played Dragon Quest 1 out of morbid curiosity, which I wouldn't recommend you go do today. The reason that that game is clunky is because you are one character with a list of commands, and this game suffers that same issue where there's like when you get your turn, there's like definitely one thing you probably really oughta should be doing. Like
Right.
it's either attacking or you definitely better be healing right now. Like you could, I guess, throw up a barrier, you could confuse one enemy, maybe reduce a little bit of damage, but I think it's arguable whether or not, you should just be attacking or healing. And like that's one of the problems. That's a really big problem I have with the combat here is that it just feels it's not scripted, but it feels scripted because when that bar fills up, there's just like the number of situations you can be in are so few. Like
Right.
there is like always a right play, and it kind of makes it a little bit boring. Whereas in a traditional JRPG, you'll have three characters at least, at least around this era. They'll be getting attacked at different times. Some of them have more defense. Some of them get hit harder. So one is your white mage. If they go down, somebody else has got to use it. Like there's this dynamic stuff happening there, and it's entertaining, right? And thank God that these enemies are not random encounters. That there's a lot of breathing room between the battles because really, if this was something like a Final Fantasy VII level of random encounter, I think the game would be pretty close to unplayable. Storyline be damned. That's
Well,
kind of how I feel about it.
considering that you have a limited amount of ranged attacks, you can only get so much ammo. Like if
Not really true. Most
Yeah.
enemies drop more ammunition than it takes to bring them down.
Right. The only argument I could see for that is if you use like an SMG with like the 7 shots, that's like the only way I can remotely see you running out.
They really just shouldn't have even done it
Yeah.
because I'm on the final chapter now and I have 550 ammunition. I am not running out of ammo. It's not happening. Like they give it out like candy.
Yeah.
Like
I
rats are
beat
carrying it, bats are carrying it, birds are carrying it. They all
right.
have they all are just carrying bullets.
well, we
Like
can shoot cells as bullets,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I guess so.
So I beat the game right before the podcast, and I think I ended with like just over 1,000 bullets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's his own gun shop.
If you're thinking that this is like an RPG version of Resident Evil where your resources are limited, like it's not really the case. And it's kind of interesting because there's no shop in this game. Like
Yes, there is.
there's no gold.
You break into it.
Oh yeah. There's one point.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like there's no gold, no currency, like no store that you go to buy better equipment. Like you just find everything in the
Yeah.
various chapters
Well,
and
to be
dungeons.
fair, it's supposed to be an evacuated city. Who are you gonna buy it from?
Oh, I guess they could make up something. I've seen more ridiculous things, right?
Yeah, like the
Like
merchant in Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
right, right, exactly. So
Yeah.
somebody at the police station, maybe the shifty guy who works in the armory could be, selling you guns on the side for some money.
Right.
I feel like it could have been easily talked through, but it is, and it's funny because like I'm not even out of medicine. Like so, your potions are something that you also have to find and pick up because there's no shop to go buy a bunch of potions at. And
Yeah, and item management is garbage.
yeah, the item management feels very survival horror, right?
Yeah,
Where like you have such a small inventory, you always have to throw something out to pick something
yeah.
up.
I
I mean, you can
mean,
spend your ability points on all kinds of things in this game, and inventory space
yeah,
is one of
is
them.
one of them. But like even still, like even upgrading it, you'll still run out. Because like when you defeat enemies, they just throw items at you basically.
What about
Like
that junk item?
yeah, the junk
Right,
item.
so junk is the only side quest. So you need 300 of them,
There you go. That's your currency.
but like you can only carry like
300.
10 at a time, right? And you need 300. So you have to go turn them into this guy at the armory, and then he
Oh,
MacGyvers you the
it
best gun
makes
in the
me
game.
want to scream.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was kind of an interesting choice. It kind of ignored it.
I did
I did
too.
try to grab it when I could, but when I found out you needed 300, it just took the wind out of my sails. Like I was like, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
just gonna keep my
absolutely.
medicine,
How
thanks.
do you guys feel about the gameplay outside of battle? Like, I found a lot of collision issues with doors and, like,
Oh my God, slow
yeah.
as shit running,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
and walking. Like the first thing that happened to me was I turned the game on. I watched the opening cutscene, which is great, by the way. Um, and then like I got to the walking part, and like you don't know there's a run button yet or not, right? And like I started walking, and I was like, is this for real? Like it is the slowest. I'm not exaggerating. I cannot think of another game that has a slower walk cycle than this. Is like we didn't play test it slow.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
for the love of God,
Don,
why?
Don was just like, the walking speed. He's like, "Yo, is this for real?" And then he actually starts running, and it's not even that much faster. He's like, "Yo, is this for real?"
He turns it on, he starts walking, he turns it off.
And like Steve said, so like I got stuck on chapter 1. I had to use a guide. And the reason I got stuck was not because I didn't know what to do. I did what I was supposed to do, but the collision detection on a lot of the objects you have to interact with, or even understanding that you can interact with them, is rough
Yeah,
sometimes. In this particular instance, it was getting a key out of a desk drawer. Now,
yeah,
opening drawers is not a thing. Like you don't just get to go open every drawer you see. It's not like that. It's like the one drawer, right? So the video game logic is tough, right, with that. And then the drawer is not accentuated in any way. It's not like yellow painted to tell you that
right,
open this drawer. It's just there. But like Steve was saying about the doors, like having to stand in like a specific, like shimmy into a specific spot where you can open the door. Like you kind of have to do the same thing with the drawer you don't even know you can open. Like
right. I had that same exact problem. Like I don't know why. Like I guess you call it like the click box or something is so tiny on certain areas, like especially like that drawer, for example. Like you could be like slightly to the like right of it, and you won't click on it because you're not in the right spot. So a lot of the time it's like you thought that you clicked on it, it was like, okay, this must be nothing, and then you just run out of the room, and then lo and behold, you missed it because they're so small, like especially doors. It's like the click spot is basically the doorknob, and if you're not right on top of that doorknob, you don't go through the door.
Yeah, you're
and
not even sure if you can interact with it or not. And I
there's
Yeah,
had a
like
problem.
there's like
Like,
no gratification when you try to interact with anything either. No like click noise, no ant noise, no nothing, right?
yeah,
um, in day 3, when you wake up at Maeda's place and you have to go into the guns shop or whatever, they didn't even tell me about the pharmacy. And so, like, I'm like, okay, well, I have to get in the car. And I can't open the door to the car, the police car. And I don't know if it's a collision issue or not, but it turns out you have to go to the pharmacy, which they didn't even tell me anything about.
They do tell you about
Before
the pharmacy. You weren't listening.
I remember reading about the gun shop, but not the pharmacy, so I'm completely lost. And your partner Daniel, he's like, "Let's go, get in the car," and I'm trying to open the door and I can't.
A is like
And I
sitting
don't.
there like fumbling with like the door handle.
It's a real horror game. I can't even open the door. It's yeah, I thought it was a collision issue for like literally 2 minutes.
I must have ran around that gun shop just clicking and clicking and clicking forever because like you see the guns in the cases. Like and the cases are smashed and the other characters are leaning over it and you're like, "Oh my god, just give me something." And you're just like walking around the counter because your brain has trained you now where like sometimes a drawer opens or something, right? And
Yeah.
you're just like walking around the counter in and out just like mashing the X button, just like click 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 click, click trying to find like please give me like the big gun. Like we're in this gun shop, nobody's watching it because the city is evacuated. Just give me like the RPG right now. Like
Right.
You know what game did it the best?
What's
The
that?
game that did it the best. Final Fantasy IX. If you walk up to something and it's clickable, question mark appears.
Yeah.
Great. Would have helped
Blue
so
Dragon
much.
for the Xbox would tell you if you walked up to something and it had nothing to do with the story, it would just say nothing. And then later on, after you've done this 1,000 times, you run across an NPC who's a nothing trader, and it counts up all the nothings you've encountered, and you can buy
It doesn't
things
say
from
nothing, but in Breath of Fire 2, they do something like that. Like if it's just a cup, it says it's a cup.
something. Just,
It-
just tell me I should be interacting with the environment. I mean, if we were talking about this the old way that we used to do the random encounter episodes, I probably would have given this gameplay a 4 out of 10. Like I'm really like working backwards here, and it has some severe flaws. I think.
I think it was
It's
just
a
too
rough ride.
experimental, is what it is. You know, they were trying to try something different, and I don't know. Some people love it, some people hate it, but it is what it is.
I can't imagine they love it for the combat, but it's a cinematic RPG, so I guess it's not the focus. So
There
Yeah,
are a lot of FMVs,
yeah,
yeah,
but I think we beat gameplay with a stick. I think it's dead.
yeah, no, and I'm itching to get into the better parts of it. So let's talk about the pacing.
pacing.
I don't mind going first for this one.
Sure.
I'm just gonna steal it. Uh, so the story I think is actually pretty great. Um, and I don't think it has a lot of really contrived elements. It goes for like a sci-fi e type of thing where like it's funny that the game is called Parasite Eve because there's nothing really parasitic happening, but there's some kind of weird experimentation going on where like essentially in this one being mitochondria just wake up and decide they're going to rebel against the body, and
Well,
they emit like radio waves and can just like make other people's mitochondria go crazy. They can do things like make them spontaneously combust, and they can do things like make them dissolve into paste.
Right.
And there's this whole like telekinetic thing going on, and the opening cutscene of just like all of those people just spontaneously combusting in the theater, flailing around, falling off balconies. It's a really, really crazy opening cutscene. Even for the PlayStation 1, even today, I think
Yeah.
it's a really, really striking cutscene.
yeah. Aren't the mitochondria feeding off of the cells?
I'm not a biologist. I don't know exactly
in
how
the
this
game,
works.
like-
I know it doesn't work the way they say it works, but
Yeah.
Right. Well, the parasite part, right? The mitochondria are using the people's bodies as hosts, or
I mean,
animals' bodies as hosts.
if I was following the whole storyline the way I think I was, like they basically say that the mitochondria is like its own organism anyway. That's just like
Yeah.
base form. But there's a symbiotic relationship between the mitochondria and the nucleus.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not symbiotic anymore.
Well, I
Right. So
believe.
with this, it's not, right. So the mitochondria decides to essentially usurp the nucleus and becomes
Yeah,
kind of like
now it's parasitic.
yeah.
Yeah. I believe like Eve mentions multiple times that like humans are like a bad host for like the mitochondria and whatnot. And
We are weak.
Yeah. So tell that to the gun.
well,
Guns
what's
must be
also
powerful
interesting
enough.
We
about the
made
opening
up for it.
cutscene is like Dawn was saying, like everyone's like, going up in flames, but Aya, the protagonist, the character that you play, actually doesn't go up in flames. So it makes you wondering like what makes you special, versus all these people that are going up in flames.
Yeah, so it's like the story gradually unfolds. You can tell it's really based on a novel because, the mystery kind of gets peeled back as you play, right? So, one of the first things you figure out, I think, like in the second chapter or so, there's something up with Aya's cells, and Aya has some kind of past. She has flashbacks of her being in the hospital, and then
Yeah.
they talk about someone in Japan essentially, breaking down into one of these weird organisms, and then they're like, there are like organ transplants going here and there, and you kind of start to piece it together, right? That like Aya is the counter.
What a cover up. Could you imagine if something like that happened in real life? Just like some people turning into monsters and then nobody ever hears about it. That's
Yeah.
quite a cover up.
Can I just say that like everybody is way too okay with the mutants running around who are in this story? Like everybody's Gucci
Yeah.
who's still there. Like the city does get evacuated, sure,
Yeah.
but like that first scene where you run across the rat and its face like splits open and its tail divides in half and it grows to giant size with big claws and everything, and then there's like other horrible creature mutations like the dog and stuff. Like this is like the Thing, that horror movie from the 80s. Like
The Stephen
it's
King film.
no, that's not Stephen King.
Oh,
um
you said The
it's
Thing. It is. It's a
the
Stephen King novel.
Is it?
Yeah.
He's looking
It's
it up.
it's actually based on the 1938 John Campbell novella.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I actually know Stephen King quite well.
I thought he
it
wrote.
definitely was not him,
Okay, I'm wrong. I thought that he did.
but it
My
did
mistake.
inspire him though. He has
Fair enough.
likes that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. But anyway,
I,
if you're familiar with that movie and the body horror that goes on, that's what this game excels at. Like,
I just thinking about how the rat does its whole transformation in front of you, and Aya just looks over and goes, bang.
yeah, you shoot it twice and it just dies. Like
Yeah.
all that build up. It's like a 4-minute cutscene. So I think as you go through this story, like there's a lot of twists and turns. It's a pretty interesting story, pretty interesting characters. And I think the game feels brisk enough to keep you engaged. Like I played 8 hours. I wish I could play more because I do want to finish it.
Yeah.
It just didn't materialize. So I definitely don't have a gripe with that particular element of pacing. You guys kind of agree?
Yeah. I mean, the stories, I feel like is short and sweet. Like it doesn't drag on too long. Like it's spread across 6 days. I mean, I would say technically like 5 days. Really, like the 6th day is just like one dungeon, if that. But like it is 6 days, and each day doesn't last too long. It's usually you go through like one or two places, and then that day is done. Sometimes there's a boss at the end, but like it's very formulaic between the days, and yeah, it's just it holds your attention long enough between the days that I was generally curious what was happening in the story, and I actually wanted to complete it because I wanted to see what happened at the end.
My only problem that I can think of with the pacing was there were parts in the story where I didn't know where to go.
Yeah, I had to pull up a guide like 2 or 3 times.
So
I think,
you have like a world map, and it seems
Yeah.
that new locations only pop up when you're supposed to go there.
Yeah,
Yeah, but there's a part where you have to go to the museum and you don't know it. There's a part where you have to
yeah,
go to the police station. You just don't know it.
right,
There's like
yeah,
5 places you can go. You just don't know where to
yeah.
go.
The game does a very poor job when you're supposed to go on like to a certain spot on the map. It doesn't tell you because there's some places you actually have to revisit, and it's not like too clear that's where you're supposed to go. Because
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
there was times where like I went into this warehouse because I thought, oh well, it's a new area, and to find out that I didn't really need to go in there at all. I had to go to like the museum instead, and I didn't know that but like
Yeah, they're just not clear with exactly where you're supposed to go, or like, you're talking to your partner about whatever, but talk about where you're going.
Yeah.
And then it's funny because like you have a little cut scene where you're like, okay, well, let's go to the police station, and that's when you have the cutscene where they're like, all right, let's go to the police station and blah 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 blah, and you're like, I wish I had known that before I selected where to go. Did you get? I just want to laugh at about when you're in the car, how fast the buildings are
Oh, I
moving.
know, dude. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm like, dude, this guy is like got a lead
Booking.
foot.
I mean, he strikes you as the kind of character that would have a lead foot, though, right?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't seem out of
Yeah,
character for him.
He's so excited that all the people are evacuated so that he can drive real fast and go whatever way he wants. He's like, we can go whichever way we want because Manhattan's closed down, boys.
Yeah, never mind the crawling heads that grow spider legs that's running around. You know, it's fine. It's as long as I can just drive like a maniac, it's fine.
He
And
goes,
like,
wish it was
Maeda's
like
not
this the whole
freaked out at
time.
all.
He's way too excited about having the roads all to himself.
Oh man.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of problems with the pacing as far as I got. Just that one, really.
Yeah.
All right, well let me uncover where the issues with pacing are. So the upgrading system, like how you get stronger, I take a lot of umbrage with. So like the enemy you're fighting, Eve, is like she can use her powers offensively, right? And like your powers are similar but different than hers, like where your mitochondria can essentially like counteract hers. Like you are the counter. I don't feel like it's a far stretch from you, and you do get some offensive skills. I just wish they had leaned into some kind of skill tree. Like you only get
Yeah.
one character, and it's a really, really linear and incremental upgrade system. Like if you get a new gun, it's marginally stronger than the old gun. There's like items you can pick up that you can make the gun a little bit stronger. You get like bonus points, but there's only like 2 places to put them. There's 5. You can put bonus points into weapons, right?
Yeah, you
Unless
can.
Which
I'm
is
missing
really
one.
weird.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But like you know, you're gonna use it on item capacity. That's what you're gonna use your bonus points for. I guarantee you. And if you're not you're gonna have a miserable day.
I didn't. I mean, I did a little bit, but I went pretty much full ATB, and
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely hurt me on the inventory side. Like I started chucking like junk items and stuff like that because I just couldn't hold on to it.
So
And
again, the game kind of does this thing where you have a choice, but it really there's one choice you should make, and there's another choice that you really, shouldn't.
right.
This is just your adult brain trying to min-max.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I just feel like would it have killed them to give you some black magic? Like the magic exists. Like there's fire, there's ice, there's like certain enemies shoot electricity. Like it just exists. Like it just feels
Yeah.
like how come
I'm
you're
gonna
relegated
go
to
out
this?
on a
Like,
limb here and say that I feel like the game wasn't like completely finished.
Maybe. I don't.
I just feel like there's missing parts to it.
Yeah, I don't know what they were going for. I mean, you could be right, but maybe this
That's
is
just a
what they
feeling
were.
I get from playing it.
Yeah.
and like it kind of is sort of like a horror survival game if bullets and potions grew on trees.
Yeah.
Like it's just like you're so inundated with
Yeah.
helpful items. You just like you're on vacation going through this
Pretty
like
much.
mutant slugfest. It's just I'm not sure exactly what they were going for with that.
They replenish the soap and the shampoo in your bathroom every day.
I was never close to running out of bullets.
Yeah.
Like I never felt stressed out. Like, oh god, I better not get in an encounter here.
Right.
Like I'm always so comfortable
Yeah.
while playing through this game.
All right, you heard it here, folks. The comfiest horror game of all time.
It
Yeah.
really is. I think it probably is. Like even more comfy than Splatterhouse.
Right.
Like
So the only scary-ish part I felt like, and unfortunately, this is like at the very end of the game.
Do you want to save it for presentation, or you want to put it in pacing?
It doesn't matter
well,
to me.
I think we're probably ready mostly, right? Are you guys?
Yeah.
You guys have anything more to say about the pacing of the game? All right.
No, we can slide right into presentation.
Yeah,
Kick
go
it
ahead,
off with
Dan.
presentation.
Pick
All
it
right.
pick
All
it
right.
right up.
Okay, So basically, the only like scariest part that I found in this game, like I was saying, unfortunately, it's right at the end of the game. So when you're fighting like the ultimate being or whatever, and he's got like four forms, but like the fourth form is obviously his last form, and you kill it, but then he's not dead. So you basically have to run away from this thing. Um, while you're on this like battleship and
Very slowly.
very slowly. But the kicker is it's like playing Jaws music as this thing's following you through each like door. But so what happens is this
Wait,
thing
Serious part is
Jaws-
you can't open the
Jaws?
doors because of the
it
collision.
literally sounds like Jaws as this thing's like
Jaws,
like
dun,
like
dun,
chasing
dun,
you.
dun, 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 dun,
Pretty
dun,
much.
dun, dun, dun.
You guys should listen to it. It's funny. But basically, um this thing's like constantly evolving. So basically what's happening is it's basically like doing like this like slow crawl towards you as you're running away from it. And it progressively gets faster and faster as it's like evolving. Like eventually it starts to stand up, and then it gets a little faster, and then ultimately it like starts to like hover, and then it like starts to fly towards you. But yeah, that was like the only scary part in the game that I could like, really see, because it's like you can't like it's not based off of your weapons or whatnot. Is you just running away from it very slowly, I might add. But yeah, as far as presentation, I don't know if you guys got this, but like for me, it kind of reminded me of like the backgrounds of like Legend of Dragoon. Like the backgrounds are like very similar, I feel like.
It was that like diorama style
Yeah,
background back in the day where they had
yeah,
the still images that your
right.
character walks on. Very,
Yeah.
very much a period piece.
Pre-rendered
Yeah.
backgrounds.
Yeah,
JPEG.
yeah, because that was the first thing I thought of like when I started playing this game was like this looks like Legend of Dragoon.
Yeah,
Personally,
I felt like 8.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy
personally,
8.
I love it. I know people really don't like fixed camera angle games, but I love
Well,
that like pre-rendered background that your character runs around on. Something just really speaks to my nostalgia brain whenever I see it.
as long as the camera angle isn't a crappy one, then pre-rendered is perfectly fine. Nobody complains about the camera on like Final Fantasy 7 or 9. Like nobody complains about those because they use good camera angles.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this game feels PlayStation 1.
Yeah.
Like from the minute you turn it on, you're like, yeah, this is a
Yeah,
this is a PlayStation 1 game.
you see the opening FMV where you get the Statue of Liberty and it looks like she's crying
Yeah.
and like just it shows you New York and everything. You're like, yeah, this feels like a Final Fantasy 7 FMV.
But really, really awesome FMVs though. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of them.
yeah, right. And they spare the time to like, I think almost every boss gets one, basically. Like every major
Yeah.
day end boss gets
Yeah.
one, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking, and I thinking you're right. Like, I know that dog boss gets one.
The alligator gets one.
Alligator.
Eve
when
on
you
the
fight Eve.
stagecoach
Yeah.
Yep.
gets one. You know, where
Although I
where she
found
lights
that
the
wasn't
horse on
like-
fire.
Yeah.
That didn't feel
That
like
was
a
brutal,
boss
dude.
fight.
Right. She lit the horse on fire so that it would run. Yeah,
I felt
and
like
then,
the worms were the real boss fight.
I
before
think
her.
so. Yeah, you just have to fight her anyway, but she was pretty easy. Um Actually, I think the only time I died was on there was like a centipede boss
Yeah.
that was like, yeah, he splits into 4 pieces. I found him like impossible to dodge, and he hit like a truck. So I actually did die on him. I didn't game over because I had a revive in my massive item
There you
pouch
go.
that I put my bonus points into. But
I actually got my first game over on the two. Was it two-headed? I think it was two-headed dog boss.
3,
It was it 3?
he was a full Cerberus.
Oh yeah, that's right, because he had different abilities between the 3 heads. I remember like the what was getting me was his stupid laser beam, and like you literally
Dogs with freaking laser beams.
yeah. So like what you have to do to like dodge his laser beam is you literally have to be like right at his side as he's like sweeping the whole area, that's like a gripe I just have is because it's like she's so slow that like
Yeah.
it's so hard to dodge stuff sometimes.
I think enemy designs in this game in general, though, are like immaculate. They
Yeah.
are perfect.
Yep.
Like they do a great job with all of that. I don't think there's like
Except
the
the
weird.
birds.
Well, the birds are whatever.
Yeah, but that's just birds. They're not mutated birds. They don't look like mutated birds. They just look like crows attacking you.
I think
It's
they
so
were better
stupid.
than the slimes in the hospital. I thought the slimes were stupid,
Yeah.
but
Well, I
yeah, I
mean,
mean
they
everything
turn
else
people
is
to
just
slime.
fabulous. Yeah, yeah, it's true. And yeah,
That's
that's
on
a good
flavor.
that's a really good cutscene too, where she just like melts all the audience skin off
Yeah.
into
Right.
slime, basically.
I'd say generally the presentation here was pretty good. The character sprites, I don't know if it was the emulator I was playing on, but the character sprites didn't look good.
No, not to you. I actually thought
Yeah, it
like
must have been. I kind of thought it was my emulator because,
It's part of
like,
the
man,
PS1 feeling, I think.
yeah,
well, as far as PS1 goes, I actually thought the sprites were really good. Like as far as like Aya looked, how Detective Dallas looked, because I'm comparing it to like Final Fantasy VII. You know, like they're like way better than Final Fantasy VII's.
yeah, no, they're kind of close to 8, I would say,
Yeah.
but I think my emulator had a problem with the character sprites, so I'm not going to hold that against it because I think it was a technical issue for me. But my big problem, honestly, the music. There's like this one track that is like everywhere. It's in the police station. It's in the central square. It's everywhere. It's a boring track. It was in my head the whole time playing.
The
Yeah.
music really is not overly atmospheric, and I think is a huge miss
Yeah.
here.
Yes.
I think it would have upped the creep factor of the game quite a bit
Oh,
had
for
they made the
sure.
music
Yeah,
more ambient and more.
it felt cool and relaxing almost.
For
It
sure.
wasn't like scary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it really makes the game a lot less scary, and I think that they, if you compare it to something like something more mundane like zombies or something, I think that the monsters in Parasite Eve, for me, are more terrifying than the monsters depicted in some other horror games.
Yeah. Because of like
Um,
Resident Evil 1, for example, it has a lot of that, like what you guys were talking about, like the ambient noises and like just that, like those scary sounding noises. And that's what definitely, like, it definitely makes the game scarier for 100%. Because when I go through Resident Evil 1 and you just hear those sounds and it just makes you tense.
yeah,
So,
Yeah, it was
this
missing in
game is
this.
devoid of jump scares. Although there's some stuff, right? Like I think everybody spontaneously combusting, makes Eve kind of scary in her own right. There's that one scene where she's on top of the hospital roof, and the government decides they're going to fly jets in and just blow the place up. Like her powers are so ranged that she essentially like kills one of the pilots and makes him fly into the other pilot, and it just kind of gives you this sense of dread that like, oh, like we really aren't going to be able to stop her. It really adds kind of a nice gravity to the story that like you feel like Aya is very important because she has to be able to resist this like potency that Eve has basically in order to get anything accomplished.
right.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that the presentation for the time was phenomenal, but the music was a miss.
Big
Yeah.
miss. Big miss.
Like for me, if they were going for like survival horror, I I definitely think they like missed the mark a decent amount because I maybe it's just because I'm older and it's just like because I'm just thinking like when I was a kid and I physically saw Resident Evil 1, I was terrified of that game. And I honestly don't know if I would have got that same feel as if I was the same age playing Parasite Eve. I don't think I would have, to be honest.
Maybe when I was younger, but now we've all lived through Dead Space and stuff like that.
Dude,
Yeah.
the evil within.
Yeah, like it's not it's cute now.
Yeah,
Um, I think the dialogue is really well written too, and I think that's part of the presentation. Like, there's this one moment where you go through the sewers, and there's this big tank, and Aya says, "Oh, it's the audience from the park. Like that slime comes
Oh,
back, and like
yeah,
you realize that it's like a bunch of people just being like churned, you know, into this slime that's being used.
yeah,
It's just like I don't know.
Yeah,
They
now it's the Butter Brigade.
yeah.
yeah. It
I
definitely
think
was a nice touch. I
I
feel
think
like,
the overall writing is pretty good. I guess is
yeah,
what I'm trying to say.
yeah. It's definitely like you because it was a novel at one point. It definitely, I do get that feeling.
Yeah, they tried to inject emotion in pretty well. I know there's like on day 3, she kind of gets really worried about her partner and is like, "Oh well, leave me alone. I don't want to turn into a monster and kill you on accident." And you know, um, your partner Daniel, he's worried about his kid, and you know, he finds out that his ex-wife or whatever turns into the blob or dies. And it's like, they do a pretty good job for what little amount of story. Like it's not like it throws it at you like you're reading a novel. It's more like a comic book in that aspect. They don't like shove it down your throat, and I think that they do a pretty good job injecting the human element into the story.
Yeah,
And I think all around, Aya's a really cool character. Like
yeah,
I like her design. I like her dialogue. You know,
right. You know who's cooler though? Is Daniel Dawes.
Daniel Dahl.
Dude,
He
he is
lifts the scientist up.
he's a badass. Okay, so I have to say this because I don't think you guys got far enough. There's a part where you're fighting the last boss and he's invulnerable, and so basically Mita has like the special bullets to actually kill him, and they're all flying up in the helicopter while Aya's below trying to like stave this abomination off. So Daniel's like, "Give me those," and he jumps out of the helicopter. And then, since he's close to the ultimate being, he catches on fire in midair, throws the bullets to Aya, and then falls in the water.
My goodness,
But he survives because
he
obviously
survives.
he landed in the water.
Like the water can stop him from being burned on a
Yeah,
molecular level.
it's
Like
just so badass. Just imagine this guy jumping out of a helicopter, throwing bullets to Aya while on fire, and then plunges into the water.
it's awesome. Yeah, no. So really, really good writing. Another standout for me is the whole raid on the police station when like there's like the whole just like attack there. You feel it. It's great.
Yeah.
All right, so what do you guys think about playability?
I definitely think it's worth a playthrough for sure, just for the story alone.
Yeah, the story carries here, and that's abnormal for me because usually if I'm not having a good time playing a game, I don't want to keep playing it. But the story really does kind of have little hooks that keep pulling you along
Yeah,
somehow that you do want to feel like what happens next.
yeah. That's the vibe I got. Like the gameplay is not the greatest, but I feel like the game's unique enough it definitely warrants a playthrough. I feel like I don't think the game's like so bad to like, oh well, you should just avoid this completely.
It's also a pretty low lift. It's not like they're asking
Yeah,
20, 30 hours of you. You know, it's a 9 to 10 hour experience, even if you don't know what you're doing, which I didn't.
right.
Uh, I spent a lot of time running around dungeons sometimes, being like, "Oh, where do I go next?" Um, you know, it's just not a heavy lift.
Yeah.
So I think
No.
that
Is this
helps it, in my
game
opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's pretty low lift. Was this re-released on anything?
Re-released on the PlayStation 3 once, and then I think on the PSP before that, there might have been either a title or a collection, but it has not been released since. Various internet sources point
So it's
toward the
still
legal situation between the author and publisher.
still kind
So
of tough to play this game.
it is. It is.
Yeah.
You're looking at emulating, or if you want a copy for your PlayStation 1, you can get it for around $60 to $70. Um, which is it's not definitely not top of the range expensive. You can get
Yeah.
more expensive than that. But if you want a brand new one, I saw a listing on eBay that
Oh.
was graded, A plus, $3,500. So
Oh, oh
you want it
boy.
in that sexy plastic, you can get it.
Yikes.
You can have it.
Passaroni.
But I think it's got enough stuff in it to make the game playable today.
And I think it's kind of a unique game too. You'll get a unique experience from it that you won't really get anywhere else. So
Yeah.
I would say playability wise, it's worth picking up, even if it's just emulated.
It was definitely a bucket list item for me. I was really happy to
Yeah, it
cross
was
it
for
off.
me too. Was on my radar for a little bit, like back in the day. I kind of just like forgot about it until the podcast. And yeah, kind of like when it popped up on the picker wheel, I was like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to play that because maybe for us, but I know for other people, maybe it's nostalgia, but I know a lot of people like this game, so maybe that's a reason why it was on my radar.
I feel like it used to be hidden gem status. I think now everybody's talked about it as a hidden
Yeah.
gem. It's a little bit more mainstream now.
You know what? You know what I think it is too is maybe back then it was it was a hidden gem because games haven't evolved as much back then. But now now that we have the games that we have, it kind of falls in that like category of like it's not as good as we thought kind of thing.
Yeah.
You guys ready to move on to choice specs? Give us our final thoughts.
Let's do it.
All right. So, final thoughts before we tell you what our verdict is on it. Is the X Factor category or choice specs category. I'm going to have to get used to saying it. Just bear with me. I'm going to take it off the outline. The outline still says X Factor. I feel like it was. I'll be short and sweet. I think it's like almost a cool idea. Lots of potential, lots and lots of potential. Like if this game, I want this game has moved into my number one spot for I want to see a remake. Like
Yeah.
I'm actually not joking. Like I would love for this to get the Final Fantasy VII remake treatment. I think it would be phenomenal done with today's graphics. I'd totally overhaul the battle system. I would just completely ignore the turn-based like ATB bar element of it, maybe except for like being able to use your Parasite magic, like Final Fantasy VII Remake has like your special combos you can use with the ATB bar. Fine, but like yeah, with modern graphics and like updated, this game would be a really sick remake, I think, because the story is there. It definitely is. There are games that come out now that have crappier story than this. Looking at you, Resident Evil.
I know.
But yeah, I'm so that's kind of where I land on it for my own personal thoughts. It's a must play in the PS1 library. It's a shame that we have to still play this old version of it and that there hasn't been any updates to it.
Yeah, for sure. I guess for me, like as I said before, like in my opinion, it warrants a playthrough. If you've never played Parasite Eve and it's been kind of on your radar, give it a play. Like it's worth that much at least. Um, yeah. As far as like what Don was saying, like a remake, I would love to see one too. I actually think it would benefit better than say Final Fantasy VII did from like the remake treatment. I feel like this game would actually be better for that. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't say it's the best game. I would say it's maybe slightly above average, but at the end of the day, I do think it deserves a playthrough for anyone that's even remotely interested. And that's my take.
I didn't get as far as you guys. Life kind of got in the way. But
I saw you playing Slay the Spire this week. Don't you BS me.
dude,
He got caught.
well, I might have played Slay like once.
Times 100.
Dude, I didn't even log on to Final Fantasy 14 this week. Anyway, I was really like on the fence on this one. The battles are just so uninteresting, and with the collision problems that I had, and the problems with like trying to know where to go at some points, and the inventory, and there's just so many things that made me not have very much fun.
Got
There
a
were
quirk
things,
factor.
Yeah.
yeah, there were things that were cool and interesting, even though the game is old. Um, that still, I think, push it into a category in which, with it being such a low lift game, is still worth trying. But I had a lot of like internal debate about this game because of mostly the way that they programmed the gameplay.
Yeah.
It's really tough. Um, it's just hard.
I
It's a
wanted to
hard
throw in
hard
here
sell.
too, before we wrapped up X Factor, that once you beat this game, you get an ending, but you're supposed to play a new game plus, and then as soon as you get access to a world map, you get access to a alternate dungeon called the Chrysler Building with lots of loot, 70 floors, and every 10 floors you fight a boss, and once you make it through those 70 floors, you fight a final boss and get a true final ending. By the way, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. So I kind of want to add on to that a little bit. In my opinion, I feel like it's kind of crappy that you get kind of like a quote unquote bad ending for beating the game when like your reward for beating the game is actually the bad ending. And you have to go through this like 70 dungeon ordeal to get the true ending, which I feel like is I would if it was up to me I would not have handled it that way, because like that's a lot of work, like especially like if it's like a pick up and play game and you really enjoy the story, like and if you want to get the true ending, 70 floors is, or 70, I think it's 77, that's asking a lot out of somebody.
It's and from what I've read on forums and stuff, people have a hard time once they reach the Chrysler Building, because it really kind of shoves you into that like the gameplay and pacing of like issues that we talked about. Like it just kind of forces all that to the forefront. You have to
Yeah.
choke it down for 70 floors.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm not about that.
It's tough.
They got more important things to do.
All right, fellas, you ready to wrap this one up?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so before we get to our conclusion on whether we tell you whether or not you should play Parasite Eve, although we kind of did in a little bit in our X Factor, be surprised if you're surprised. We're just gonna get our plugs in here. So I wanted to say, if you are still watching the video at this point, make sure you hit that like button. If you're watching on YouTube, please, 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 it's one click, super easy for you, means the world to us. Do us even better, hit the subscribe button. And you can also find us on Facebook. We post updates over there. You find us on other podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, plenty of others. So, if you're listening on one of those platforms, go ahead and leave us a kind rating and review. That is like the super, super helpful thing for us, just trying to get discovered and get the word out about our podcast. Also, finally, consider joining the Discord. We do viewer-related polls that direct to the show all the time. We're almost like a viewer-directed show, where people can submit games to our retro decks that'll come up randomly. We every 3 episodes just straight up do a viewer pool, which is a much smaller pool of games, all handpicked by our viewers. I think the last time we did it, we got like 13 games in there, so it's roughly a 10% chance if you were to submit your game to that. And then even for our Coliseum episodes, we do a poll, and essentially our viewer base picks from the 4 options that we present. So it's really kind of a great way to have a hand in the show. Plus, there's other stuff that goes on there too, like memes and news, and we have like we mentioned already, a Slay the Spire
Yep.
community. So that's how you can connect with us. And let's get back to talking Parasite Eve. All right, fellas, it's the moment of truth. Steve, catch or run away? Because I think your answer is going to be the most interesting.
So, knowing about there being a sequel, somebody said there was 2 sequels. Is there Parasite Eve 3?
Yep.
There it is. It's on PlayStation 2.
Okay. So, like I was saying that I was conflicted earlier about the whole experience. For me, I'm just gonna go ahead and say Runaway. The main reason that I say that is because I almost guarantee that not any gameplay, but I'm gonna take a wild stab at it and say that the gameplay problems are probably a lot more polished and better resolved in a sequel. And even though the story is gripping and, you know, I think it would be worth playing, I'm just going to say you're probably better off trying the sequel.
Fair enough.
Who wants to go next?
I'll go next. Yeah, well, the game doesn't come without its flaws, obviously. The story does carry it pretty hard. But that being said, I do think the story is very interesting. And, things like, the slow run speed and the linear progression and all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's not as good as it could be for sure. But I felt like the game was definitely playable. And as I said before, if it was on your radar and if you're just a little bit interested in it, I do really think it deserves a playthrough. And, for me, I would say this game is very slightly above average, but I would catch this one because it deserves a playthrough, I feel like.
It's up to you, Don.
Catch it.
That's it.
Turn your hat backwards.
Mic drop. No, I mean, it's a pretty one of a kind experience. It's not without flaws. It's not getting into my top 25. I don't even think maybe top 50 games of all time, but it doesn't mean there aren't other games you should play, and I think this is one of
Yeah, it doesn't even hit my top 20 PlayStation games. Sorry.
So that's it. That's our verdict. You should give Parasite Eve a hesitant try because Steve said no. And that's what we thought. But what did you guys think? Let's get our Discord poll up here.
We have 11 votes on the poll. We had 3 votes saying that it's an amazing gem. Gungrave, Tom, and Wingard voted for that. We had 3 votes on it's an interesting mixed bag, and that was all 3 of us. We had no votes saying that it's not surprised, it's forgotten because it's bad. Nobody voted for that. And then the majority of the poll was 5 votes on never having played Parasite Eve, and that was Orvos, Hux, JMO, and 2 others. I have to click on it. Avatar and Happy. So that was the poll for the game.
Great. So I'm ready to set Parasite Eve aside. Probably. I might actually finish it after this episode. Or it's going to go on my growing amnesty list of games that I need to finish right there
Never
with
gonna finish.
Banjo-Kazooie. I'm thinking about starting a stream just for Don's amnesty games. But anyway.
Near the end of the games. It's like final
you
boss.
know how streams always start at the beginning of the games? Well, my stream is just going to be like the end of every game, like the last couple
being
levels
confused, tune in.
Where did I leave off with this one?
Half the stream spent trying to figure out where to go, like in our game of the week.
So next episode, we are going to be doing a Coliseum episode, our patented Cable Club Coliseum episode, which in my opinion is the best reason to come and listen to the Cable Club podcast, where we take 2 games that are pretty well known and put them head to head together. So our YouTube poll revealed that our next Coliseum game set is Resident Evil 2 versus Silent Hill.
We get to play an actual scary game.
Yeah.
I guess we're staying in that PlayStation horror. I guess the audience was feeling it after we picked Parasite Eve. I
Yeah,
don't know.
maybe. Or maybe they want an actual scary game this time.
So
I played Resident Evil 2 maybe halfway through as a kid, but I've never played Silent Hill, so I'm kind of excited for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too. I really love Resident Evil, but I actually really haven't touched the Silent Hill series.
So if you're listening and that sounds compelling to you, play along with us, or at least send in your comments on which game you think is better and why, because we're going to be taking them to task on the next episode. And I think that is it, fellas. Do you have anything else to add?
I don't think so.
I got one thing. So if you enjoy the show, you know, I feel like if you want to, mention like if you have a buddy or something, or why don't you mention it to them? Send them our way. We would love to have growing members of our Discord, any of our platforms that we're on. I feel like we have a good time. Like our meme channel is always popping off.
Yeah, like we've said in the past, we'll keep saying it in the future because the main thing isn't necessarily the podcast for us. The main thing is to get a bunch of people together as a community to enjoy, retro games and try and play games together. And if there's a multiplayer game, we'd like to jump on and play with our audience and just like grow our relationships with the community. It's important to us. That's our main reason for doing this. So if you have friends that think that they would enjoy this kind of content, it would mean the world to us if you would invite them to share this experience.
And of course, to our already listening audience and subscribers, thank you so much. You guys are the reason that we keep going.
Here, here.
All right, game over, fellas?
Game over.
Game over.
Die, monster! You don't belong in this world.